Who'd be a pundit? Well, for some reason, me and my fellow presenters would. We made several predictions at the beginning of the season, and Scunthorpe and Peterborough are proving to be much better Speedway teams than we are as predictors of form. But form, as the saying goes, is only temporary, and there is always a banana skin around the corner, if you don't mind me mixing my metaphors. Who would have picked Bellevue beating Peterborough at their place and Kings Lynn taking Sheffield to a last heat decider? Only in Speedway. Well, good evening and welcome to the Speedway Tavern. In the tavern tonight we have old friend Matt Buck. I shouldn't call you old really, should I?
Well, because he's a bit younger than you.
Shouldn't call you friend either, really, should
No, I know that, yeah.
It's probably the baby, isn't it?
But other than that statement was 100% accurate.
Good evening.
And Chris, I know nothing about Speedway. Webby, Brown.
Thank you.
Here we go. And later on we've got somebody special coming on the show. Would you like to tell everybody who we've got coming on, Matt?
We've got Jeff Davies from Safe Coventry Speedway and Stocks. Should never forget the Stocks as well, because they're obviously out in the cold at Brandon as well. So quite good timing as well with the new application from Brandon Estates having gone in last week. So Jeff will obviously bring us the latest on that one.
Up to date, and hopefully bring us a bit of hope.
Mm-hmm.
We all could do with a bit of hope these days. So before we get started on that, we've both seen a couple of Speedway matches this week. How did things go at Wolverhampton yesterday?
Very good win. Really good crowd as well. The biggest crowd of the season, of course, Freedom Day, as it was billed. So
that was perfect for Wolverhampton for it to be on that day.
Very good crowd. A good win as well. Wasn't Ipswich obviously came to Monmouth Green earlier in the season. Were absolutely battered, to be honest. They got it closer this time, 14 points, although they were very reliant on their two reserves, Drew Kemp and Paul Stark, who scored 19 of their 38 points. Mm-hmm. But it was a good win for Wolves to take Wolves top of the table for the first time this season, obviously with Peterborough losing at home against Bellevue, as you say. Added to that, of course, the win last week at Bellevue, which was a complete surprise. I think only a couple of people on the prediction group predicted Wolves to win there. I certainly wasn't one of them. So
yeah, there's a lot of red in that.
Absolutely, yeah. So it was, so a good few days for Wolves, and I think probably the biggest bonus really was the size of the crowd, to be honest, which has been much needed, and fingers crossed that will be replicated tomorrow at Perry Bar.
And tracks around the what are we in? Country.
Yeah.
That's the word.
But it was. I have to say though, obviously being a Speedway fan for so many years, I've seen so many great rides over the years, and Jason Crumpy is absolutely right up there, and it's painful watching Crumpy at the moment, because he's been embarrassed by riders who, no disrespect to them, are nowhere near as good as he was in his prime.
There's not many riders that were as
absolutely
good as him.
No. It's sad to say. We'll see how he gets on in a few weeks at Perry Bar. I think Perry Bar is probably a track that will suit him. I think he's got a 100% record at Perry Bar as well, hasn't he? Because he won that ELRC.
It's the only time you read that.
Yeah, so that'll be something to look forward to. I think seeing a 3 times world champion riding at.
There's no tricks to Perry Bar, is there? And we should actually talk about last week's match against Scunthorpe. First of all, what a good team Scunthorpe are.
They are a very good side.
Especially with Adam Ellis now, I think.
I spoke to a couple of their riders before the meeting, and they said that they fancy the chances of because so many people have been talking about the fact that they've been superb at home but not got any points on the road. I think they sense, with Birmingham having so much uncertainty and having little track time at all at Perry Bar this season, that there was an opportunity to go there and get the win. And I think really the meeting turned on James Shane's fall in heat number 9.
Yeah, I would say so.
I think that really, some said Scunthorpe really just, they were solid, weren't they? They were either picking up heat wins or they were packing in the minor placings, and they just basically snuffed Birmingham out. Yeah.
Oh, hello. The sun's just been.
The lights have come on.
Yeah.
The lights are on, but nobody's on.
Yeah. I think the writing was on the wall for Birmingham fairly early on. I think you could see the way it was going to go. But talking about that James Shane's fall, what a great pass he made.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was difficult conditions. It was very dusty. Although there was some very good racing, to be honest.
The track was, I would say, 100% better than it's been for a long time. To be fair,
absolutely.
There was plenty of dirt on there. I mean, no fault. It did get dusty, but it's not. I mean, it was so hot. It was like this, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So our track just dries so quick anyway.
Yeah. Big prize as well for Jack Thomas. I thought he rode very, very well. More than deserved his spot in 8:15.
Absolutely, give him a lot of confidence. Hopefully.
Yeah.
A win for Scunthorpe. Excuse me, I'm doing a bit of maintenance now.
Our producer's just giving us a bit of a...
There we go. Sorry, well...
You won't be so hot then.
It is live, by the way, everyone, so it's not... we don't plan this show.
Have you ever thought that we planned it? You've just been disavowed of that notion. As I say, a good win for Scunthorpe, but perhaps not all bad news for Birmingham. I thought, there was promising signs there. They were obviously rusty out the gate. Bomber looked good apart from out the gate.
He was the only rider that really got close to Adam Ellis. He had a good battle with him in the first one. A good battle with him in his last 8 as well, didn't he? So
yeah, Paco looked a little bit at sea during the meeting. Hopefully that will...
I think one or two people suggesting whether maybe Paco had been over celebrating on Sunday and was still feeling the effects of that. But
you had to bring it up, didn't you?
He was really gutted at the end of that meeting, though. I mean,
he was. I saw him.
He was on the floor, wasn't he? So
yeah, I did see. So it's not for a lack of trying. But the big disappointment was Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, I mean, he came into that. I mean, he's been one of the form riders in the championship, hasn't he? For Eastbourne. So I was expecting big things of him, but he never really got going, did he?
No, I don't know why. I mean, I'm not for riders don't come in trying not to ride because points mean money. I mean, it's very simple. But he just wasn't. There was no spark there at all, was there?
The one thing I will say, even with all the problems and the fact that they've had so little time together as a team, there clearly is a very good team spirit in Birmingham, and I think that's going to stand them in good stead for the rest of the season.
Well, I think we're going to need it for next Wednesday. Should we talk about Wednesday, or do you want to get on with speaking to Jeff? I don't know what
we're going to speak to him in about 6 minutes.
Okay, right, good.
So plenty of time.
So, I mean, the good news, of course, is that we've just found out that we're allowed to take money on the gate.
Yep.
So hopefully that will big up the crowd.
What do you think the crowd was like on last Wednesday?
I feared it was going to be worse than it was.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. I was worried that it was going to be worse than what it was. And come 7 o'clock, I was thinking, oh dear. And then, as always happens at Perry Bar, everybody turns out at the last minute. They seem to come out of the woodwork. You look up again and think, oh, that's better.
Yeah.
So
needs to be a good crowd. I think there should be a good crowd tomorrow. It's going to be glorious weather again.
Kids are on holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. So
well, get yourselves down there. They've got no excuse tomorrow.
I mean, it's a tie that Birmingham are very much still in. So
yeah, it's going to be
against all odds.
It's going to be an exciting match. For lots of reasons, there's a bit of needle there now.
To a point, I can understand why Redcar were so disappointed that they weren't given a bye. To be honest, because one, there was no way Birmingham were going to come back at them in that first meeting. Redcar were just too strong.
Well, okay, I'm going to point to 2 facts here. We came back from almost exactly that amount at Redcar.
Yeah,
in the same amount of heats. So for you to say that there was no way that we wouldn't, you can never say that.
No, you can never say never. It didn't look like it on the night. I must admit that. That's what I would say.
No, it didn't look like it, but it didn't look like it on the night at Redcar either. And the other thing that I'd say is rules. They're there for a reason.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So sometimes it works against us, sometimes it works for us, and at Birmingham we've had it work against us more times than not. So I'm not apologising to anyone, and it makes for a great match anyway, and which is what it should all be about.
Absolutely, yeah. So hopefully we'll see some good racing tomorrow.
And I'm going to give my prediction on that one now, because obviously we'll be doing the predictions later, but I'm going to give you my prediction on that one now. Birmingham's going to win by 2 points. Which would then obviously mean a race off.
Yep.
Wouldn't that be...
it would be interesting, yeah. It would be fantastic to, great way for hopefully a big crowd to welcome Speedway back into Perry Boros.
Are you dinging?
Sorry, what for? Oh, sorry,
Yes.
yeah, sorry. Yeah. Dylan Spuddy Hodgetts. Evening, chaps. Been looking forward to this since the last one a couple of weeks ago. Somebody had a holiday, didn't they, or something? Can't remember who it was. Yeah.
Two of us did, didn't they? So,
Yeah, we did,
actually, so.
yeah.
Mine wasn't because of the show. Didn't get in the way of the show though. That's the only thing.
Great week to be a Wolves fan with a fantastic result at Bellevue last week, and then smashing Ipswich last night. Not good seeing Crump looking such a shell of himself and seeing he's crashed again tonight and withdrawn. Shame to see. I think it might be worth him calling time on his career before he gets seriously injured.
I didn't know that he'd crashed tonight.
I didn't know that. No, obviously he's riding for Plymouth, isn't he? So
Yeah, he's pulled out of tonight's meeting at Plymouth, says Simon Corbett. Harris Road reserve last night for Peterborough, which must be a big plus for them, says Craig Smee.
I don't imagine Chris enjoys it.
no, they're going to have a strong reserve throughout their season. They want the all season. Peterborough, so
they've really surprised me.
yeah.
It's that experience again, I guess, and that will hopefully, for their point of view, when it comes to the business end of the season, show them in good stead. So we shall see. We shall see. Is there more?
No, that's it.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. If you've got anything to say it.
How do they do it?
Well, it's quite easy, isn't it? You can follow us on Facebook. Many of the good groups, Speedway groups and pages. You can also follow us on YouTube, on our own channel, and on the Twitter account, which is also our own Twitter account. So just search for UK Speedway Tavern. There you go.
It was simple.
Yeah.
So simple you could say it.
It's got to be simple, if I can say it.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So we're going to be talking to Jeff Davies in about 3 minutes, I believe.
Yep.
And for those of you that don't know who Jeff is, he's the leader. Would be that?
I think he's unofficial lead, to be honest. I think it's
Okay.
obviously a team event, but I mean, for Jeff at the moment, I think this is a full-time job for him. So
Of the Save Coventry Speedway
yeah.
team, and they've just been. They've just put in a bid for the stadium, haven't they?
They have, and of course, Brandon Estates have reacted by putting their own second application, I think.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll be talking to Jeff about that.
And we've got this. Can you see it?
Yep.
Which is a very interesting
It's
document.
very well put together. Very, very well put together.
their
No
presentation.
stone has been unturned in putting this together, to be honest. So
So yeah, it's
it's well worth. If you can get it on if you go onto the Save Coventry Speedway website, you can download the newsletter on there. Trust me, it's well worth reading.
it is worth reading. Particularly one was the stadium sold, but we won't go into that just at the moment.
Nope.
We'll get Jeff, who knows a lot more about it than we do, obviously. There was two Grand Prix over the weekend.
Yes, unfortunately, I haven't seen either of them. 'Cause I was
Neither have
away.
I. So if anybody did, let us know what you thought. Simon Corbett's just asked, what did you chaps think of the GPs over the weekend? I think I forgot they was on.
I was away, so unfortunately I couldn't see them. But Magic Yanowski and Artem Lagurta obviously won both. Won the two GPs. Magic Yanowski, I think he's only dropped about 5 points in Poland all season. He's absolutely flying.
It's getting
at the
to the
moment.
point now where it's just Poland, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean, where's the next challenge going to come from?
Well, it doesn't. The big thing for me is Sweden. That seems to have completely dropped off the scale completely. There's nobody coming through in Sweden at all now.
No, and yet they've got a fairly good league system with
fairly good pedigree in the sport as well. Denmark, they obviously promised a lot, but haven't really kicked on.
No,
Thinking about it, probably we've got the best youngsters after Poland at the moment, but a long, long way short of.
we've had a
where
couple of
Poland
good
are.
results, haven't we, in the under-21s and so on?
Yeah.
And we also mentioned the GB team for qualifying.
Great
for
result in Hungary.
the
So
players. Is that just to tell us you're back?
Yeah,
Yeah.
back, yeah.
We didn't want to know that.
Hopefully he's on the line now.
didn't know you'd
okay.
gone. So.
So over to you, Matt.
Well, we should now be joined on the line by Jeff Davies. Are you there, Jeff?
I am indeed, Matt, yes.
Thank you very much. It's good that the technology's working, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Right, well, let's start off right as we are at the moment, Jeff, because Brandon Estates have put a new application in to redevelop Brandon Stadium. First of all, your reaction to that, please.
Well, it isn't a new one, actually. It's a revised one.
Right.
So the previous one submitted 3.5 years ago still stands, but they've revised it. And what you can see is that whereas their first application was to build 137 houses, was ridiculed and effectively killed off when an independent consultant appointed by Rugby Council looked into their claims and our counterclaims. He came down on our side effectively, and he said that they had not met the criteria, the planning criteria which they were aiming for. So that was really a real heavy blow for them. So I'm not sure whether you know, Matt, but to build on Brandon Stadium or any other stadium, developers have to satisfy one of three criteria. They either have to prove that in this case, the stadium was surplus to requirements. And that is a route they initially went down, trying to prove it was surplus to requirements. And that's the one they failed on. The consultant has concluded that they failed to make that case. So the other two criteria that they could attempt to satisfy is the second one is that they build a replacement stadium somewhere else, which they're not interested in doing, obviously because of the cost, which leaves the third criteria, and that criteria is that the developments for other sporting facilities which compensate for the loss. So what they're now doing with this revised application submitted just a week ago, they're trying to go for that planning criteria by including in their plans to build houses a full-size 3G floodlit football pitch on the car park. In addition, of course, to the houses, and that's their aim now, to try and make the case that complies with the planning guidelines, and also that it compensates for the loss of what was there. So, what it really amounts to, Matt, is what we believe is it's a desperate attempt to get around the planning laws, frankly. They failed to satisfy the planning laws in their first time round, so they're going around the back door and trying to come in with this one. And I'm sure you can imagine that we, and I say we, the campaign group, we're now scrutinising the planning application as we did with the first one. We're going through it line by line. We're highlighting all what we'll loosely term errors and untruths in the documents, and we will submit our response to that document within the consultation period. And then eventually it will go to the planning committee, and they will make a decision to either approve or reject the application.
Now, I think in the original, also the original application, of course, the pursuit, the narrative that they set out to pursue, I think, was that as a Speedway stadium, it wasn't viable. Now, it's interesting that whenever they talk about it not being viable, they only refer to it as a Speedway stadium. They don't mention the stocks, because clearly the stocks obviously is the more lucrative for getting a crowd.
Yes. That's exactly right. Exactly right. They make. They try to avoid references to stock car racing, and we don't dispute the fact that the stadium, as a Speedway stadium alone, would not be viable. It's quite a big stadium, as you know, I think it's about 26 acres, and if it only ran Speedway, then it would not be viable. No doubt about that. But since 1954, Matt, it's run Speedway and stock car every year since 1954. And as you rightly said, the running cost for stock cars is far lower than that of Speedway. And stock cars has effectively, for all those years, subsidised Speedway and made the stadium viable. So, and the other thing about viability, it's really, really distasteful when you read in their planning application that it's not possible to reinstate the stadium because it would cost too much. It cost X million pounds to reinstate it because it's been so badly vandalised. Well, we don't dispute that it's badly vandalised. What sticks in the throat is that it is them, the developers, that have enabled our stadium to be vandalised into the state it's in today, and it's a shocking indictment on those the owners of the land. And of course, they're being taken to court by Rugby Council. So I'm not sure whether you know, but when they first took over the stadium at the start of 2017, the stadium was fine, and even the independent consultant concluded that the stadium was in good shape. There was no need for excessive monies to be spent on it, only normal annual maintenance. So it was in a good condition. For a speedway stadium, motorsport stadium, we know they don't compare to football stadiums, but for a motorsport stadium, it was a good stadium. And since then, or in that first year, 2017, when they took over, by September of that year, there had been 3 incursions by gypsies. The first one in June, and then another one July, another one September. And at that point, Rugby Council served a warning notice on the developers to tidy up the site and make it secure. They gave them 1 week to do that, and they failed. So they were served with something called a community protection notice, which, as the name suggests, is to protect the local residents from all the hassle and inconvenience caused by the gypsies and other people going onto the site. And that was served in September. Instead of accepting that, they decided to appeal it in court. So it then went to court 5 months later, during which time there was 2 further gypsy incursions. And then when it went to court, and I was there when it went to court in February 2018, they settled out of court and paid the council's costs. So that community protection notice was in effect from that date onward. But because of everything that's happened since then, and the continued number of people going in there and smashing that stadium up, it's shocking. Then the council served, and by the way, there's been a number of fires, serious fires at the stadium, the grandstand at one end, the restaurant end. And every day of the week, people are going in that stadium and causing damage. Every window in the stadium is smashed, every door is ripped off its hinges. It's truly shocking and heartbreaking to see. So the council served another notice on them for breaches of that community protection notice. And now that's gone through process. It's been a long process because of COVID, delayed, by the courts because of COVID. But now a date has been set for the trial, and that's the 11th of October this year. So later this year, Brandon Estates will be in court on trial for breaching a community protection notice.
I'm not sure whether you're obviously aware of our show, Jeff, but we do have questions put on our shout box. Chris, have we got any questions for Jeff that have come on yet?
Yeah, here's one for Jeff from Brian. Brian Book. He says, can Jeff confirm the objections lodged against Brandon Estates' original application will be carried forward to the latest one? This doesn't seem to be the case with my house, where the first application produced over 1,900 comments, but the latest one has only received 247 objections.
Right, that's a very good question. I'm assured by the planning officer that objections raised first time around 3.5 years ago will carried through. And there was 1,800 people sent in letters of either emails or letters of objection from all around the country, and indeed, from other parts of the world. So they tell us that they will count. However, what we will be doing is asking people to submit their objections again, because effectively this is a we believe it's, although it's an amendment, it's they're having another go, and we want people to object to their current proposals. So we will be making a call in the next few weeks when as the consultation period kicks in, for people to once again make objections, assuming they do object, of course, make objections to the current proposals.
There's another question as well. I'll just get this one in. Jeff, I've followed your campaign right for a long time, and as a Bellevue and Speedway supporter, the sports needs a historic club like Coventry back. I admire the group for what they've done, and I really think you have a good amount of support against Brandon Estates. How confident are you with plans and getting success in the court case, or do you think their new plans might scupper it?
Well, you can never be confident, because you never really know what a planning committee might decide. In the end, it will be 12 councillors who make the decision. Now, we hope that they will make the decision based on the planning criteria. That they may well set aside any emotional arguments about the stadium and that sort of thing, and they base it purely and simply on the merits of the planning application. But we believe that they will not comply with the planning guidelines. How can they possibly try and justify that the inclusion of a football pitch will compensate for the loss of speedway and stock car racing? And there are other issues that we will be, we don't want to give too much away at the moment. As I say, we're going through the planning application, and we're picking out some key elements that we will raise objections against. So I wouldn't use the word confident, but I would use the word optimistic. We're optimistic that the planning application will be refused, and we're also optimistic that the case, when it goes to court, they will be found guilty of breaching the community protection notice. And in the end, whatever a court may decide, I think most people would agree with me, most right-minded people, if they saw that stadium on December the 31st 2016, the day before the current owners took possession, and they saw that stadium today, the court of public opinion would be in no doubt. They have failed miserably to secure that stadium. And we believe, and I have to be careful how I say that, we believe that was a deliberate tactic of theirs to leave the stadium open for it to be damaged. And use the cost of reinstatement as justification for saying it can't ever be reinstated. So we hope they'll be found guilty. We think the evidence is overwhelming, but again, you can never really tell. So we'll see. I think the court case is scheduled to last for 4 days, so it's going to be quite a lengthy case.
So with regards to the condition of the stadium and the site, Jeff, of course, you've mentioned about the fact that people are going into the stadium now. I think the group have made it quite clear in the past that is not helping anybody, because people who live in the area, they're seeing people going into the stadium, they're more automatically assuming the worst, that they're going to go in there and do damage. I mean, maybe the majority of people are going in there just to go and have a look and see what it looks like, but I mean, I think there was that photo a few months ago of 2 people walking along the roof of the grandstand, which really shows how precarious it is, because I would imagine that parts of Brandon now must be pretty unsafe, having not been used for over 5 years.
Well, exactly. We've always discouraged people from going in. We've made public pleas for people not to go into the stadium. They're not helping our cause at all. Much of the damage, of course, was done by gypsies on 6 separate occasions. Gypsies have been there and they stripped the stadium of anything of value. And they also did a lot of damage, like smashing windows and doors and so on. But it's kids go in there every day, and I dread it with summer holidays coming up now. They're breaking up, I think, tomorrow from school, and there'll be kids going in there every day going in there because it's not secure. I've been to the stadium tonight. I've only got back 15 minutes before you rang me. I go to the stadium. I was there yesterday. I go to the stadium at least 3 times a week, and I take pictures of everything that goes on at the stadium. I don't go in. I don't go inside the stadium, or very rarely. But I record everything that's happening around the perimeter of the stadium, and there are openings in the perimeter of the stadium that have been wide open for weeks and weeks on end. So it's shocking.
Yeah, it sounds heartbreaking. I mean, even as a Brommy supporter, nobody wants. Nobody wants. Well, yeah, but you understand that, of course. Nobody wants to see that.
I mean, I can well remember the damage that was done to Dudley Wood after it was. After, of course, it was vacated by Cradley at the end of '95. But to be honest, Brandon probably looks in a worse state than Dudley Wood ever was, because I suppose literally because there's more. There's more structure, more to damage at Brandon, but there is, of course, an offer on the table to buy the stadium and convert it back to being a sports stadium. I think the gentleman's name is Warren Hunt. Is it, Jeff?
It is. Yeah, that's correct. So Warren Hunter made inquiries in 2017 and again in 2018, and the developers, the owners, in their original planning application, made a statement that whilst a number of people had inquired about the stadium, none of them were credible, basically. Well, let me tell you, Warren Hunter, I obviously know him. We speak and we're in regular contact, even as recent as this last weekend. Warren Hunter runs a business. He grows vegetables on 2,400 acres of land. He harvests those vegetables, processes them. He employs 520 people. They distribute them via their fleet of 66 refrigerated, articulated trucks to all major supermarkets, Tesco, Marks and Spencer's, and their turnover is £54 million a year. That man, is very, very credible, credible. And for the owners to dismiss him as not being credible is ludicrous. Well, that's what they said in the first application. In their revised application, it won't surprise you to know that there is no mention whatsoever of the offer to buy the stadium. They don't even mention it. And yet they have not rejected his offer. They've neither accepted or rejected it. But they haven't mentioned it in their planning application.
Well, I believe Warren has actually been to Brandon. I think Brandon Estates did actually invite him, so they know that he's interested. Do you think there was an element of Brandon Estates hoping that when he saw the state of the stadium that he might be put off?
Yes, I mean that visit came about because we had a meeting with Brandon Estates. We, the campaign group, that is, had a meeting with Brandon Estates last March 2020, and the reason they met us was because in the independent consultant's report, he suggested that they should meet us to talk about. They actually said to talk about a replacement stadium. So. The only reason they met us, frankly, is because the independent consultant had recommended that. They wanted to tick that box. But during that meeting, we put a number of proposals to them. And one of those was that they sell the stadium. We said that clearly, and they acknowledged that they'd underestimated the opposition to redeveloping the stadium. And we said clearly, this is not going to be easy for you. It's not been easy. Would you now consider selling the stadium for a sensible price? And they said, well, there's nobody interested. And we nearly fell off our chairs. And they I mentioned Warren Hunter. They said they didn't know of him, even though we'd put emails from Warren Hunter in our response to their planning application, which proved that he had been in contact with Brandon Estates and so on. So, at the end of that meeting, we asked them, as an action, would they be prepared to speak to Warren Hunter and gauge his interest and see if there was an opportunity to pursue it? And they committed to do that. They also committed to something else, which they didn't pursue, to be honest, even though they committed to look at it. But anyway, as far as Warren Hunter is concerned, they agreed to make contact. We offered to facilitate a meeting with them, but they said they'd make contact. Months passed and nothing happened. Warren heard nothing from them, so we prompted them. And eventually they made a phone call to Warren. Cut a long story short, Warren met them at the stadium last May 2020. And he walked all around the stadium. It was in a shocking state. But he phoned me soon after he left the stadium and said that he was going to go away and think about it, and he'd make a decision very soon. And a few days later, 1 week later, he sent in a formal offer letter to the developers. He phoned me to tell me he'd formally sent in an offer. And I think it knocked them sideways, really, because, as you say, I think they were expecting him to see the condition of the stadium and say that he was no longer interested. But he wasn't fazed by what he saw. He's a very practical man. He's got the resources. And, of course, we've got an army of people, an army of skilled tradesmen and women that have volunteered to give their time and skills freely. So we're absolutely certain, despite the condition of it, that with Warren, if Warren was to, if they were to accept his offer, then we could make it happen. No question of that. And there's good examples what's happening now in Oxford, with Cowley being reinstated. They're doing a lot of work. You've probably seen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Volunteers are doing work at the moment to tidy up the site. Another example is Odsal, 20 odd years after it's closed.
Yeah.
It's now back up and running at the moment, just running stock car events. But so it can be done, and we're absolutely confident that given the opportunity, we could bring that stadium back to life and bring it back to its former glory.
We got any more questions come up, Chris?
As you can imagine, there's quite a lot of support for Coventry. I always love my trips to Brandon, supporting Wolves on their trips to take on the Bees, and I had the most enjoyable chicken burger and chips I've had at Speedway Track I've ever had. I've seen videos of the stadium in recent months, and it's a crying shame to see it in such a state. Fingers crossed the correct decision is made in due course, and we can see racing return to one of the spiritual homes of British Speedway. And that's from Dylan Spuddy Hodgetts.
Well, Dylan, I sincerely hope you're right, because there's nothing I'd love more to see than the Bees beating the Wolves again at Brandon.
That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Just one last question. If you get the go ahead by compulsory purchase to take over the stadium, what time frame do you think it would be to bring it back to life to host Speedway and stock? Says Craig.
Well, first of all, compulsory purchases is sort of fraught with difficulties, I think. So I'm not sure it would be a compulsory purchase. But if there was a go-ahead you know, in the coming months, being, you know, absolutely honest, you wouldn't get it running for next year. What you might be able to do is to stage some events next year, possibly, you know, run some stock car events in daylight, or run some, you know, the odd challenge match, Speedway challenge match, whilst the stadium was progressively being reinstated. So, you know, you've got to make the stadium safe for a start. You've got to restore the electricity and the utilities. There's a lot of work to do, and what you might initially do is to cordon off the main grandstand and try and utilise the two bends in the back straight, for example. But to actually enter a team into you know, one of the leagues, as you know, you've got to sort of declare that around October time to run the following season, October, November, in time for the annual conference, and clearly that won't happen. So it wouldn't happen next year, team racing, but if there was a change of heart by the owners and they sold it to Warren, there's a possibility there could be some events next year, but not league racing.
Yeah. Just to finish off, Jeff, on a positive note, of course, as we know, an alternative planning application has been put together. Could you just tell us a little bit about that, please?
Well, yes. I'll tell you the reason why we did that. It's been 2 years since that independent consultant issued his report. And for 2 years, the owners, the developers, have been saying they're working on new application, you know, they hope to submit it very soon, etc. And it's been dragging on and on and on with absolutely nothing coming forward. So we thought, we will submit our own application and we will explain in that vision what we envisage the stadium would look like if we would be successful to get it back. And it would, of course, be reinstated for Speedway and Stock Car. You don't need planning permission to do that because it's been a Speedway and Stock Car stadium for nearly 100 years. But what you do need planning permission for is to change the use of some of the buildings. So in our proposals, we put forward, for example, the bar beneath the grandstand would be converted to a gymnasium. One of the large hangars at the front of the site would be made into a museum, Speedway and Stock Car Museum. The large dog kennel building, when they used to run dog racing there, would become a new bar area and cafe, like a clubhouse type of thing. The centre of the track, which, as you probably know, is tarmacked, much of that would be replaced by or with a surface suitable for equine events, horse jumping, that sort of thing. And you'd still leave runoff areas for stock cars, but you know, a large part of it would become an equine surface. The dog track would become resurfaced to become a cycle track, and there'd be cycle tracks around the site, around the car park, and so on. And there'd be cycle proficiency and cycle maintenance, those sort of activities. So, and what we did last month was to distribute a newsletter, a 12-page newsletter, very nicely printed newsletter, to 1,000 homes around Brandon and Bindley Woods, all around the stadium, to make people aware. It gave them an oversight of overview, I should say, of what had gone on in the last 4.5 years and our proposals moving forward, our vision for the stadium. We've actually prepared the planning application. It's pretty much finished, but what we wanted to do, and it's very well written, I might add, even though I say it myself, because one of our committee members is a consultant town planner. But what we've done is to distribute that newsletter as a form of community involvement, a consultation, and we've invited the community to say, what they think of the proposals and what else they would like to see there. We wanted to make it the hub of the local community. Everybody who lives in Brandon Village has moved there since that stadium. The stadium's nearly 100 years old. There's nobody anywhere around the stadium that's been there longer than the stadium. And, we wanted to make it a community hub. And there's been some really good ideas come forward, which we will eventually include within our planning application. Now, whether it's coincidence, people will make their own mind up. But the fact that we distributed that newsletter and made the council aware of our intention to submit an application, we also had to notify the owners of the land, Brandon Estates, that we intend to submit an application. You have to give 21 days notice. We did that. Now, whether it's a coincidence that soon after we did that, they've submitted their revised planning application, people can make their own judgment. But we now need to concentrate, because they've submitted that application, we need to concentrate on scrutinising that and coming up with our response to that. So our application will sit there. We're almost ready to submit it, but we need to concentrate on the response to the developer's application first.
Well, of course, I think on behalf of every Speedway fan, Jeff, I think everybody wishes Coventry all the best. It would be fantastic to have the Bees back. Jeff, thanks so much for giving us your time, and we really appreciate it. And it's, as I say, we've got your the newsletter in front of us. It's really well put together, and I think every Speedway fan is rooting for you, mate.
And can I just ask Jeff that when and if you have some news, could you come back on the show and let us know?
We will indeed, yes.
Brilliant.
We'll come back and let you know. Maybe what we'll do is, if it fits with your time frame, when we've completed our response to the planning application, which will need to be within the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yep.
We can come back and we can tell people exactly what our comments are, what our objections are, what points we're going to raise regarding the application. So, and invite people to submit their own response.
Right. I mean, I think I'm saying for everybody, you can come on here whenever you like, mate.
Yep.
That's great.
We're all rooting for you.
But that's really good to hear. So thanks.
Cheers, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.
Look after yourself, mate.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was very enlightening, wasn't it? It was.
And I have to say, I mean, he talks very professionally and is the right man for the job.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Now, I think you've got some fixtures that I think you've been furiously writing down.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, we've got.
Are we going to have time?
Well, I don't
want to ruin it by rushing it, because we could always do it on the Facebook page.
Right. Let me just say this: there are 15 fixtures, so we probably haven't got enough time. But what I was going to suggest is that we do live on air, get everybody's predictions for tomorrow's matches.
Yep.
Which then we can get the rest of the fixtures up on the website, and it gives people an extra bit of time to get the results for those. So there are 2 matches happening tomorrow: Brum versus Redcar, and as is traditional, Matt, you can go first. Be careful what you say.
I'm going to go 43-47 Redcar.
Okay.
I think it'll be close. I think Birmingham will run a lot closer than they would than they did in the original.
I hope so. We might not be talking after tomorrow. Okay.
I'll go Brummies by 10.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I would love that. I think it's going to be Birmingham by 2. It's got that feel about
stars,
it,
isn't it?
Yeah.
So.
It's got that feel about it. We've got a few coming up. Simon Corbett, Redcar by 4. I used to like him. Craig Smee, Redcar win by 4. I never liked him. And Dylan Spuddy Hodgett says Redcar by 6, 42-48. Oh God, I'm going to love to prove you guys wrong. I hope we do.
Well, you're ready tomorrow, are you?
Well, I could. No, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say something really stupid, like I couldn't have done any worse than. But anyway, not going to go there. Poole versus Plymouth. Both of these knockout cup matches, by the way. So that's down to you. Poole versus Plymouth.
I'll go for a Poole win 50-40.
So 10-point win.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for 18-point win to Poole.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Poole by 16. Obviously, they're probably, it's possible we don't know the full story yet, but of course Plymouth might not have Crumbly, so.
No.
Yeah.
That's true. That might strengthen them.
Yeah, possibly.
When has that ever been said before?
About Jason Crump.
Yeah. Dylan Spuddy Hodgett says a lot will depend on Redcar's guest for Jenkins. Not sure if they've announced who they've got in yet, but a lot could depend on that. Simon Corbett says Poole by 20. Poole to win by 16, says Spuddy. Depends who Plymouth get in for Crump. So there you go.
Yep.
It feels like quite a sad show in a way, talking about Coventry and hearing about the state of the track. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the pictures,
Yeah.
but the fact that it's just an ongoing thing, that even to this day they haven't put the required security to look after.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But
You know.
the bottom line is, as I think as Jeff himself has said many times, it's been vandalised, it's been burnt, but it's still there. And while it's still here, there's still hope. I mean, we've seen as I say, Jeff mentioned about what's gone on at Oxford. I mean, Oxford's not been used since 2012, so it's been out of use longer than Brandon has. But Oxford is arguably in a better condition. I mean, it seems to have avoided all the fires and all the break-ins that Brandon, unfortunately, is. And it's worth reiterating as well what Jeff said about people. Please do not try and go into the stadium, because it's not doing the campaign any favours. People doing that.
It's not tourist attraction. It's but I mean, although it has been sad from that point of view, there is cause for optimism.
Yeah.
Obviously, with what's going on with Oxford, I mean, perhaps we might have a chat with those guys in the future. And I feel for all the Coventry supporters. I know what they're going through.
Absolutely, yeah.
We were away as Birmingham from the sport, as many of you know, for 20 plus years, whatever it was. I never thought we'd see Speedway back in Birmingham. But
I mean, it's on. Years ago, the thought of having no Speedway in Coventry was unthinkable, wasn't it? Because it is. They are one of the giants of the sport.
It's iconic. It's the proper use of the word iconic.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, looking at some of the artist's image of some of the plans they've got. I mean, it's potentially that it would rival Bellevue.
Yeah, and I would suggest to people to get onto it and have a look at it.
Yeah, because it is brilliant. Go on the South Coventry Speedway website, and it is on. There's a link on there for the newsletter, and trust me, it's well worth reading. It's really well put together. It's
www.savecoventryspeedway.com.
Yep, and of course, I'm sure in time we'll be able to give you the details as to how you can support the bid.
Absolutely.
And reject and object to the one that the developers have put in as well.
Yeah,
which I don't think anybody will need to encourage you to do that. To be honest.
Thanks for the kind words, Spuddy. He says thanks again for a great show. I'm not sure how you sat there not melting in this crazy heat.
So we've been true heroes. We've not once mentioned how hot it is, have we?
No, we haven't.
Well, not on air anyway.
No.
It is.
It's so hot.
It is hot, yes.
Hot.
That's why we've got the lights off, really, because it's just too hot.
It was too hot. Yeah. But thank you for that. I guess we call it a day now.
We're there.
We will put the rest of the fixtures up on the group chat as well.
Yeah,
so
and it gives you a day to think about your predictions. Good luck to everybody. Good luck to everybody's team, unless they're riding against Birmingham. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
good night.
Good night.